Welcome to Saturday Roundtable, where we talk about our projects, what we've been up to, and what we could use help with, if there is anything. Who would like to start?
I can go ahead and start. So my main project is GoalieBot. I'm saying that rather than Reason Score just because I think it's easier to explain. So GoalieBot is a online personality that builds mass agreement by helping people understand each other and understanding the evidence behind what they believe. So he builds a mass agreement. I have not made any progress. I've been moving. Although, Jubilee, I wanted to see if you would give me an introduction to those guys on YouTube that interviewed you several weeks ago. So
I can introduce you to Jared. Jared, I know more than he's come to a few solution raisings. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I'm sure I could just reach out to him, but it's nice with an intro. So it'd be good to be interviewed on their podcast and get my CAP rating for my project. I think that's what they called it, CAP. Anyways, and then I was going to do some stuff with the U.S. election, but it's coming up really fast, so I don't think I'll be able to do anything else effective. And then there's several other similar projects in the area of sense making and collective action. Really is a good term for it. Through Open Global Mind, Canonical Debate Lab, Society Library, Choice Society Library, and Open Global Mind are both trying to find funding for some projects that they would need some developers, so I could do that. Adriel might have some work for me in the future. So there's lots of options in the game A thing where I'm gonna need to make some money at some point. I'm starting to now, but I need to kind of figure out long term how I'm gonna feed and clothe myself. So that's where I'm at. I don't really need any help except from Jubilee, and unless anyone has something they need like an explainer video for. That's something that GoalieBot or Reason Score would be helpful. Or the most helpful thing was if you knew someone else that you had a disagreement with, that'd be kind of not like climate change, although it could be, but something smaller and that seems at least partially fact-based, isn't all opinion, like who's the best Star Wars character or something like that. Would be a bad example, but something that real world. If you could think of someone that you have a debate with, then it'd be good if I had two people that would be willing to use my tool to make that decision together or come to an agreement. So that's it for me.
I just unmuted to say something, and then I was like, oh God, that means I'm next. I will. And then I forgot what I was going to say when I unmuted. My projects are solution raising, which is an hour-long conversation. We generate adjacent possible solutions we could implement now with 10,000 people and $100,000. And we held our solution raising last week on humor. I don't know what we're going to hold it on this week. I haven't decided yet. My other project is Meta Learning Magic. And we are starting our first 6-week course on Tuesday. There's 5 of us all together. There's 1 spot left if I happen to find someone applicable who wants to come and create crowdsource solutions to our own lives. So we're going to be dealing with health, relationships, time, and resources on 4 different weeks, and then holding a solution raising to meta solve one of those things, and then introducing people to how we can grow this structure to 10,000 people. We're going to put in $25 a month. So we have a ton of resources and we can retire people from game A to game B. And so that's what I've been up to this past week, is just starting the 6-week course, putting it out there, being like, right, it doesn't need to be perfect. It's just about inviting the people I feel comfortable enough with that it doesn't need to be perfect, which is perfect. It's game B people, and trying that process and seeing how it works and then improving it together. And I also don't think I have anything I need help with at the moment. Just attending that 6-week course myself will be enough. I just need to also learn how to feed and clothe myself, but without money, I need to look like, how do I actually put food on the table that is delicious and nutritious? And so that is what I will be dealing with first in the 6-week course. And I will absolutely be introducing you to Jared from Upgrading Society. I can do that as well. All right, who's next?
I guess I can go next because I assume that Vincent's going last because I think he's in the hot seat. All right, my project is Conferati. It's meant to be an source of information that earns your trust. It's also, I guess, a partner project to WikiLection, which has, for the most part, been my project up until now. But now, WikiLection is just sort of a part of Conferati. Been working with one of the other people that shows up to these meetings, either going by Radek or Matoush, on the prototype for WikiLection. That's been up, still waiting on the final version of that. But while I'm working on that, I've been working on the specs for the prototype for Conferati, where the next step is probably it's going to be a platform to help build what I'm calling portals like WikiLection, where it's sort of information sites that would share from the same root information source. So I've been working on the specs for that. And when that's ready, then I'll probably be working with Bentley and Radek to help manage some developers, probably in India or in just hired on Upwork to start coding the platform. And that's where I'm at.
All right, is it my turn? So right now I'm working on a project called Catalyst. And recently I made some significant progress in the last few weeks. The problem that the platform is solving is information overload specifically, and also not enough, how I see it, actionable information on traditional social media platforms. And so even I myself have been like, with quarantine and not being doing my usual things, I've been spending a lot more screen time on like Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, just scrolling. And there is a definite like addicting quality to like the reward system of scrolling, but I do it because I want to get connected to some sort of actionable information, things I could do, ways I can help people, ways I can impact the world, new things that might help me in my personal life. And so the idea is basically creating a platform where instead of an algorithm determining what you are seeing, you basically set out intention in what sort of information, resources, people you want to get connected with. And when you go on the platform, it basically, through a series of filters, lets you filter your own and create your kind of own feeds. And right now, obviously, that's a big undertaking. So my initial prototype that I just finished has basically the capability to go into different rooms, which are basically like fellowship room, project room, startup funding room. And then within those rooms, there's hundreds of each type of that information. And you can filter and sort them by 5 different metrics right now. I'm using Webflow. So it's a no-code solution, and Webflow has like a limit of 5 multi-reference fields. And so you can filter by location, by the person, like, is this useful for an entrepreneur, someone of faith, by the type of information, the topic, and also the room that it's in. So I just got the filtering capability finished, and I also have a prototype of the site that I'm still kind of working on the UI. I'm looking for a little help just kind of like on feedback with the design before I start kind of like going into beta testing, because I know it's not there yet. And the other thing is I'm looking for some help just like with the data collection and cleaning up side. There are some like scripts I'm looking to write that would speed that process up a lot, in terms of like taking information and just reordering it in other ways, so that way it's easier for me, because I've been collecting like the first like 2,000 posts myself, and they're very rich in terms of the data, but it takes a lot of time. And I'm going through all my internet tab. I have like 1,001 tabs open, and I'm going to be kind of like putting those all into the database and like categorizing everything, so it's really easy to search and filter through for anyone.
Awesome. And you'd mentioned maybe you and I swapping some time so I can kind of help you out on those scripts. Probably the easiest way to do that, if you want to just find some time on my calendar, bentleydavis.com/schedule, or if you go to bentleydavis.com, there's a schedule button.
Yeah.
I think, did we done that
Yes,
before,
you did.
right? Did we? Yeah. And we might even want to go ahead and record it and post it on here if you're doing open development. That way other people can see what it's like to collaborate in GameP projects and do time swapping. And I definitely would want you to kind of look at Golibot and Reason Score and just give your feedback in general, and then your business feedback on maybe you could help me brainstorm on different funding or sustainability, markets or stuff like that. So
Yeah, that'd be great. I would love to do it kind of like live when I'm with you, so I can give you my like immediate feedback.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So let's do it.
Cool. So Jubilee invited you to also be on the hot seat. Is there anything that we as a group could work with you on? If you want to do a demo of what you have so far and get our immediate feedback, would be something.
Sure. Yeah, let me think about. So for the hot seat, what do you guys typically? What is the typical end goal or of it?
Yeah, so it's just an opportunity for anyone to ask for help on their project. So it's very varied. So it's really whatever the individual needs. And honestly, a lot of times we haven't had someone on the hot seat because all of us kind of know what we're doing on our project and didn't really need any help. So we haven't done it a lot, but it could definitely be anything that you would find valuable, having undivided attention of 3 other people.
Okay. So that sounds good. In that case, I think the 2 questions that I would want to kind of revolve it around would be like, one, in the current design, is the information like understandable in this way? That would be the first one. And the second one is something like this valuable enough that would consider spending time on it instead of being on a social platform, which is a lot more like alive, so to say. And if so, is it something that would be worth like paying for in any regard? So those are kind of like assumptions that I'm trying to test right now.
Excellent.
All right. So I have not screen shared on this yet, so give me a second.
It's just down at the bottom if you can see the little tabs, mute, stop cam. There's one that says share screen, and then we'll pop it up on the
Okay, great.
where the 4 of us are.
I have a lot of tabs open, so.
Well, when you share a screen, if you're in Chrome, it'll give you the option to share. There we go. So you can put up whatever you want in there, and then I'll put it up on the screen. So that,
okay, cool. All right, so this is the current site. I am signed in. This is a homepage. So basically, at the beginning, there's just ways to kind of like filter through the information. So I'll start with like the highest sort of category. So networks are open spaces for aggregating crowdsourced knowledge. So these could be issues like coronavirus, domains like education, cooperative economics. And so within each one of these, if we go into, let's say, entrepreneurship. So each domain has its own sort of like homepage where you can kind of like see the description, the rooms that are inside of this network. So these are like the specific types of information that are in it. So startup funding, career change, and hackathons. And then I also have a YouTube playlist that's embedded in each one. And the idea is making like a crowdsourced YouTube playlist for each one of these topics that anyone could add to and submit to from the site. So we can kind of create like a knowledge base of like the best videos for each one of these domains. So within the rooms, if you're signed in as a member, you can also like save and unsave different rooms. And you can also follow or unfollow different networks. And once you do that, also have members that are inside of these, and you can see kind of like the member's profile. So going into the room, so I'll go into startup funding because this is the one that I kind of populated with the most information thus far. So this is basically the card view. So I'm working on the layout a little bit because there's a lot, even a lot more information that's kind of on these cards right now, which I have on each one of these opportunities. And so these are all different funding sources, and you can either change the view. So for example, going to map view, and now you get all of these resources on a map, and you can kind of open them up individually, or you can switch back to the card view. And then also have search functionality, which I'm not sure exactly how to prompt this, but you can kind of search by almost anything that's in the card. So for example, New York, and this is like all the funding opportunities, accelerators, capital incubators that are in New York. And you can also filter it by type. So let's say you want capital, focus, and it'll show you like how many results for each one, and you can reset the filters. Obviously, a hard part of this was like getting the filters to not be insane because there's like 300 countries. So for each room, it has like a customizable set of filters that make it like not very overwhelming for the user. And then you also have like a post functionality where you can post into this room. I'll stop there so far if anyone wants to jump in with anything or tell me where to go next.
Just had a quick question at the moment. When you say I could post in here, does that mean it becomes a card or does it become something else?
Yes. So the idea is these are all crowdsourced knowledge bases that anyone can add to. And so I don't have it set up yet, but basically when you post, it'll have a little form and it'll have all the fields specific to this this room. And then you can add to it. And when you add to it, you would also get points. And the idea that I'm trying to kind of flesh out right now is that there's like a commons of knowledge. And when you add to the commons of knowledge, you kind of have, you like almost have ownership over a certain percentage of the knowledge. And as it grows, obviously your percentage decreases, but there will be some sort of value that you might receive back from the network if you are an owner of knowledge that's on the commons, basically.
So I'm trying to think because I think I got a little you've showed this to me before, I think, but I think I've completely forgotten it since you last showed it to me. So I'm kind of like coming in fresh. I thought that it was a feed, which implies new information coming in, but really this is a knowledge commons, right? So
So this one is actually, I kind of change it up. It's Catalyst directory. And so this is like all of the information that is on the site, and it's not as much as a feed. It's more of like you have an intention to find something and you can go here and find it. However, there's a dashboard page where I'm starting to work on more of a feed. It's a little more complicated to do this with no code. So the feed right now is you have all of the different joined rooms and networks. You can see all of your like saved posts. And then what I'm also working on is notifications. So for example, if you say I want to save this or be notified for this startup accelerator because I just missed the deadline and I want to know when it's open again for next year. I'm trying to kind of help people stay on top of and manage opportunities. So that could be a fellowship that only happens once a year, an accelerator, an event, a sort of like volunteer opportunity. So trying to help people kind of like stay on top of notifications. So basically as like something that you're following gets updated in terms of like the date, then it would show up here. So yeah, I don't have like a traditional feed yet. But that's something that I hope to develop potentially in the next prototype, which is not a no code. Yeah, I mean, the other thing that I can do is based off of the information that's in someone's profile is kind of like a workaround. But let's see. So when you go to someone's profile, you can basically, you can see like the things that they submitted. You also have the capability to see the things that passively match the attributes in their profile. So real quick, I'll show you guys what the kind of like personas look like. So like Facebook kind of like automatically puts you in these like kind of buckets of like, we think that you're this type of person, and they try to like tag you in all these basically things to like show you relevant ads. And so the idea is obviously in a platform where we're not collecting data and selling it, it is up to you to basically tell the platform like what kind of stuff you want to see. So for example, if you consider yourself a gamer, then you can kind of subscribe to this gamer tag. You could go here and just look at all the resources for gamer, and it'll show you like all the new ones. Or, so this is kind of like a Reddit, like a subreddit. Or you can, when you're making your profile, like check off like I'm a farmer, I am a systems thinker, I am spiritual, and it'll base your feed eventually will kind of like show you the information that has been recently added that matches these things, as well as the other things in your profile, like which rooms you joined, which and which networks you're in.
So a couple of thoughts. One is an interesting challenge with knowledge repositories or commons is making sure, is knowing when things are up to date, because often they get stale pretty quick.
Yeah.
And then also a process of keeping things up to date. I even I'm often frustrated by like I'm in the technical space, so often someone will do a blog post about using a technology, but they won't mention what version the tech was, and of course, and a month later that could be wrong. So at least having the date that the content was created, the date it was last updated, and then and of course you've kind of maxed out your filters in this technology, but being able to filter on that in a way for people to either update it, or it's even more important than whether or not it's updated is just when someone looked at it and made sure it's still correct.
Right.
The last time it was kind of checked would be something nice, and maybe even have things if they weren't checked after a certain amount of time, and that may vary by group. Like tech, it'll happen a lot faster, but if you're talking about sustainability processes, those don't change, those don't go out of date, they're kind of evergreen. So
exactly.
But yes, something for just future is giving some sort of visibility into how stale the information might be, and maybe hiding it after a certain amount. That'd be something you have to consider or manage by group. But yeah, I think that's a really important part, because there's a lot of places out there where you go in and these knowledge commons just haven't been kept up to date, which is understandable. But it's nice to know when it happens.
Right. So the current, let me know what you think about this. I was considering kind of having it where like if you upload a resource, then you would put a date when that resource, like you kind of guarantee it fresh until it's like the extra, it's like the expiration date for your post.
Oh yeah, so I have it by item. That's interesting.
Right. So each item, if you upload the item, you are the best one to say like, this is a project, it's probably going to change in 3 weeks. Or this is like a toolkit, it's been here for 10 years, I've been using it, it's probably going to be here for another 2 years. And so then once that date passes, then you kind of get a notification where it's like almost your responsibility to help keep things updated. And if it's not updated within a certain time period, then it'll kind of get archived on the site until somebody else updates it or verifies that it's updated. So that was the kind of current scheme that I had, especially for projects. That was important, like keeping projects up to date. The idea is like, if you submit your own project, then you put a deadline in which that project is no longer visible, and you get an email sent to you automatically saying, hey, we're taking your project down unless you can verify that it's still up to date or update it. And that's actually what I need help with on the scripting, is pre-filling forms so that people don't have to like redo the entire post, but they can basically like pull the information from the previous post into a new form to like update it.
Yeah, I think that's good. I'd also like to have it to where other people can come in and say it's stale, because I know if there's a big temptation if it's your own project to just put it like 10 years out, and then of course the project fails and no one knows. You don't go back because you're so depressed when it doesn't work out. So yeah, so also I think that's an interesting idea for people kind of saying how evergreen it is, but as long as we maybe when possible, as a feature, have it to where people can also kind of say, I think this is stale, or like I went and tried to follow it and it's broken here and it's different here and stuff like that. That would be helpful. But yeah, that's a good idea to have it by item. It's interesting. Yeah, because sometimes things are evergreen, sometimes they're not.
Yeah, I've already had stuff on the site where I'm like, oh no, the link broke since I added it. Great. Like it's been a month.
Can you, for projects, is that... Go to projects. Let's see
So
what
actually, this is an experiment of like a Pinterest board view right now. But eventually, basically, I have each information type has, I don't know if I can't switch tabs. So each post has the following kind of like main categories of information. It's either a resource or like a tool. It's an event, which can go on a calendar. It's an opportunity, which an opportunity could be like an offer. It could be a request. It could be it's something that's a little bit more time sensitive, like an event, but it's something that can be like attached to other things. So like a project can have multiple opportunities. A resource could have an opportunity. And then there's projects, which I don't have any projects on the site right now because I didn't want to have lots of people's like personal information on here until I like secure it. I have some in Airtable that of friends that have projects that are looking for help. And then saved are actually all the ones that specific to my login I've saved so far.
So there's just in what you're saying, all posts sounds like it's media, like it's like all posts don't actually include all posts because events, opportunities, and projects aren't in all posts.
They do. I just don't have many events, opportunities, and projects live on the site. I just kind of put a few up to test.
Okay, so these are 4 distinct things, or everything fits under all posts?
Everything fits under all posts.
Okay.
There is another category that I haven't added here, which is like basically resources / tools, which is basically most of what everything is right now.
Yeah, so when I go to projects, those are projects that I've said, yes, I want to follow in some way, whether that's because I want an opportunity, like there's opportunities I actually want to do in it, or it's my project and I want other people to do opportunities, or I just want to watch what's going on in it. Is there a way to distinguish between those levels of my involvement as the user?
Yes. So this save tab is only posts that have been saved. Could also have only projects that have been saved, only events that have been saved. That's kind of just like a condition. So I guess I'm trying to figure out if this stuff should be in like the dashboard, where it's like this is everything you have saved, and then you can like subcategorize it by the type of information it is, or if you go to that page was basically like all the posts on the site. I wanted to kind of be able to like jump in and just see what's on here and then see like the different types. But I also added another little tab so you can kind of like quickly see like, like if I go and save Kumu, then it'll show up here.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this helps because I'm not a tech person. I can't even do no code solutions. But to me, it seems like if I'm under projects, I want what I've saved to be at the top. Like the more relevant I've made it, the more I want it at the top, as opposed to Game A where they put who's paid them, right? The sponsors at the top, to have like who I'm sponsoring. Like these are the ones that I'm dedicated to. Mm-hmm. And so if then I want to be able to, I want both. I want to be able to see what I've saved and see everything that I've saved, like the full picture. But more importantly, if I'm in opportunities, I want to see the opportunities that I've said in projects and events that I've said are most important at the top, right? Like personalized sponsorship. I don't know, but that's what's coming up for me. And I'll let the more techie people give more feedback on the stuff you actually asked about.
So no, that is a good question though. Is like what order in which these should show up. Right now, the default is it's shown up by the number of saves that a post has by default.
So
Or-
collectively, we've decided this one's more important than this one, as opposed to I've decided that I care more about acoustic neuromas than diabetes, but there's more people with diabetes than acoustic neuroma. You know what I mean? But I have had acoustic neuroma, which is why I would care about it more. Like that
Right.
level of.
So I guess if I create like a feed page, the order would be like time based. Like if it was just uploaded, it's going to kind of show up in the top, maybe. In the like all posts right now with popularity, and then in your posts, I don't know how to sort it.
So let me pipe in here and talk about my philosophy. It's funny, my philosophy I've always said, or last couple of months when I've been thinking about this, is that it deals with feeds, but it also, I just realized listening to this that it deals with sorting on just like any display page. So ideally, and this is a lot of text, so this may not be short term, but people should be able to choose what algorithm is used to sort the display or to sort a feed. And it'd be one of the things I've been thinking of is just a general tool that lets you not just choose an algorithm, but have a library, a public library that people can contribute algorithms and then choose from and use them in case they're not technical. And then some, general simple things. So yeah, like in order. So if you have a filter and then you have it time-based, that's probably okay, unless the data gets so big that it depends on how narrow you want to narrow it down.
Yeah, I'd be interested in exploring other solutions that can integrate into this prototype. As of right now, Webflow doesn't allow dynamic sorting. It's like you have to set the sorting for each page, and then you can't really change it unless you add an additional like script or JavaScript on top.
Yeah, and then we kind of need to figure out in the short term what are the sorts and filters that would be kind of most common. Because you don't want to, we can't expect you to have this brand new sorting and filtering library as part of your project, right?
Yeah.
And Adriel and Jubilee, if I'm talking too much, y'all just go ahead and jump in. I don't know, Jubilee, if you had any more that you want to go over before, but I got a couple more ideas.
So I just want one more thing.
Sure.
In terms, I haven't showed you guys the different like views, but I do have a view which is basically an Airtable embed that I have for like, this is like 1,300 free online courses. And so it's a little bit too much to like upload to the site as like an individual card. But within this view, you can obviously use the Airtable sorts and groups and filters, which is nice. Although I don't like love their UI as much as it's not obviously very customizable. But that is one option I have, is to kind of like use another like Airtable or another spreadsheets kind of like embed with built-in sorting. That's something I would like to eventually build, but obviously within the no code version of this, that's what I'm doing. And then in terms of other ways to other views, I like showed it briefly. I actually just got this working last night, but I have a Kumu embed. So anything that has a plot view, I can do like a mind map, and it's all pulling from the same database, but this is a database of all different fellowships. And then they're all kind of connected and categorized by like different tags and stuff like that. So you can like, for one data set, like kind of switch between the different card, plot, list, different views. That's all. I want to add that.
So have you run across the group called Open Global Mind yet?
Yes, I'm planning on joining their next meeting Thursday. I've been like following some of their stuff, but like it's very, very dense, and I'm excited to be a part of it. But I was like, I'm not ready yet.
Yeah. Yeah, so they're working on Knowledge Commons and stuff, some very similar stuff. So you'll like that. I've been attending
Okay.
for several weeks now, well, several months maybe. So yeah, so I want to suggest that. And then, oh, I had another idea, but I've lost it now. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good. To your first questions for us, would we use this, and maybe even would we contribute to it as a resource, as a commons that we financially fund? I would be open to both of those. We've certainly in our own group tried to create that. We've created 3 different versions or 4 of that projects piece for things in Game B. And then, maybe even Game B could be a tag in there if your tech currently allows for something like that.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, just in general as a place to keep up on what tools and stuff are available. My only concern is that there are a couple other things that, of course, aren't exactly overlapping this, but do overlap some areas of it. So then do I have the cognitive time and, and energy to keep this as one of my resources that fulfill those needs? So I'd have to kind of think about how this fits in with everything else.
Right.
But so the answer is probably yes. I don't know if I could justify paying. I mean, I contribute to a lot of things just because I want them to exist and I use them. So I think that that's good. If like would it be a business need to pay for, or there's a difference in the startup community between a vitamin and medicine, right? A vitamin is kind of nice that people don't often do it. They kind of want it. And then there's the have to have. So I think this is kind of in the vitamin unless you're a salesperson or something, and these contacts are extremely important. But yeah, so those are both possibilities, and maybe I need to spend a little time getting in there and give you more specific. Like I did find it helpful because of this, or I'm missing this. So.
Right.
Like for me with value, it depends on which part of me is paying for this. Like as a project holder, if I was paying like $10 a month, or whatever for, I would want to be getting volunteers and getting people if that was part marketing, then yes, I would be willing to put it in. If it was just to be on a different list, no. If as a user, it was more like a Patreon where I'm putting $5-10 towards it, and then I get to choose where that money, like it's going to support projects and going to create things. With part of it, of course, going to do the site, but I don't know. I don't think I would pay for just the site. It would be like the idea of what that money's going towards, with some going to the site. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Like I'd want to be involved, like Patreon, right? I'm not paying for Patreon. I'm paying for the artists, and then Patreon takes money. And so that's in that level is probably where I would want to pay for it.
Okay. That makes sense.
Hey Joel, do you have any feedback?
So is the top level item for all this, what would you say is projects? Like that's sort of what most of the information is centered around, or is it sort of evenly projects and resources?
Okay, so I guess there's a difference between what it is now and what I would like it to be. So right now, the main information is tools and resources. So that is basically, like really cool platforms, websites, toolkits, things that I've found over the years that I was just like, wow. And that I like very frequently reference people to. And that if I didn't, if I wasn't crazy about like information hoarding and like finding all this stuff, that I would have never found that stuff, and then I wouldn't have recommended it to other people. So that's just kind of like what I have in my back pocket already, which is what it's kind of like it's made on the site. But right now, everything on the site is more or less around the idea of social impact and the related fields that are, in my mind, most vital to social impact. So like there's nothing here for sports, but there is for cooperative economics. There's nothing in here for like fashion or like news unless it's like a very informational news article that relates to systems design or sustainability. And so mostly everything is kind of centered around more important issues. And the idea is that, so obviously I would like to make it free for anyone to basically go on and like do what you guys just saw and kind of like filter through the information. But I was thinking of making like a kind of like a Patreon membership tier where you become a catalyst, and basically the financial contribution will go towards like growing this common. So like even if you just like subscribe and you use it frequently or occasionally, and you can upload your own things as well, the money will go toward growing this so that it's kind of a win-win. You are also helping creating something that you're a part of. The other part is basically want to create a reward system for like people who help contribute to it. They will actually get like paid out for helping build the platform. And the other thing would be to basically, like I kind of want my full-time career to be a connector. So like I want to reach out to like the 2000 climate change organizations that I've found over the last few years and like ask them like, what are the opportunities you have for people? What help do you need? And how do we kind of like funnel more energy and time towards things that already exist that are good? And basically making the connections between people that otherwise wouldn't happen when, you know, you have, I look at all these Facebook pages and like these Facebook groups for like, you know, climate change organizations, they post like 3 people like it and they're like asking for something. And then other people post that they're looking for something and like 2 people like it. And so like, I wonder if they're ever getting connected. And so the idea would be like, not just me, but having eventually a team of people who are like those connectors. And when you pay to basically be a member, then you also in your profile basically choose what things you want to be connected with, which could match any of the filters, hundreds of tags, locations on the site. And then we will kind of like also focus efforts on trying to find those things and basically send like a either customizable like email digest or pop it in your like notifications. So kind of like also when you join the site and you put out your intentions of what you're looking for, then we kind of start shifting focus to like what the users need to like accomplish their individual goals. I would like it to be centered around kind of like P&B, which is why this is like one of the first places I'm like really sharing this. And I'd like to make sure that it stays aligned with that. But that's the kind of idea. And then obviously, hopefully at that point, we'd have more resources to start building out the sort of like passive connection newsfeed or, you know, other systems like that.
I see. So when you say resources, that's in essence, is that referring to like not individual website, but kind of where it might be like the website for a startup accelerator or something like that, or it could also be like a news site like CNN.com might be a resource, not the individual articles, but just the site
right
where the articles are
I'm
hosted.
gonna share my Airtable so you guys can kind of
Okay.
see into the madness if you'd like. So basically, and if this is confusing, I would love to get feedback on that. But so how I have it right now is, so there's post types. The main post types, as I kind of previously mentioned, are events, offers, organizations, projects, quest, resources, individuals, which is like a user, and then discussion, which I don't know if I want that, but it's there. So if I go to all types and I group these by the type. So basically there are like subtypes, like for example, Startup Accelerator is like a subtype of funding, but it is also a resource. An organization has subtypes. So like you could be a nonprofit, design network, activist group. And then I have tool type, which are tools are resources. So design tool, database, Chrome plugin, systems mapping tool. And then the other things like you mentioned, like, so there's content, which is more of like, this is an article or a book or a show or a movie, like kind of like one singular piece of content that you can kind of consume. And then a resource would be like Netflix is a resource because it has multiple pieces of content on it. A visualization website is a resource, an aggregation website, a wiki, a Google form, a database. So like basically I have it very broadly categorized right now as something that helps people achieve a goal, and that is not as like, it's not as specific as a piece of content.
So I'm not familiar enough with Airtable yet. Can something exist in two of those categories and subcategories at the same time?
So each post has a main type, and then it has other types. So you kind of pick like, what is the main thing that this is? And that one gets kind of like displayed on the card, because I don't want to have like 10 things being displayed
Right,
with
right.
commas. So there's a main post type, and then everything has a subtype. And you could actually see like, these are the posts of the, so these are all the posts that are of the main type. So like visualization website, strategic intelligence is a post that is the main thing. It's a visualization website. And then you can see the room that it's in. And you also see the link of like a list, Nomad list, Listopia book list. Like it's the secondary list as well.
So something maybe to consider for the future, unless it's too complex, is kind of a, I don't know, a graph ontology or a hierarchical ontology or tagging system, because sometimes things do fit in multiple places, and also you want to put it in a very specific place. But if someone searches for a more general thing, like if someone's looking for a systems diagramming system, it's also a resource, and maybe when you attach it to the systems, the application knows that it's the system thinking, the application automatically knows it's closer to these things. So if they search for that, then it'll find the near neighbors. That's something just in general I've been thinking about on how to organize that data. And of course, Airtable is not designed for that. Webflow is not designed for that. So that would be something interesting to work on.
Yeah, that is a very interesting problem. That the way I've been working around it for now is, so within the posts, there's obviously the different rooms, and so I kind of have it like the forms are subcategorized. So for example, this is like the update project form, and so the project form already has specific fields like filled out basically. And so when you submit a project, you can't like make it a piece of content accidentally. So it obviously reduces the time that a user needs to spend, but it also helps the categorization. So if you're in the project room and you hit submit, it's automatically going to know you're trying to submit a project and like give you that form. So I'm kind of hesitant to create like a general form, but I did want to share one thing with you guys. I don't know if it's going to pop up right now, but this is how I've been collecting the information that I'd also like to figure out how to scale this to mobile and also like let other people use it. Okay. All right, so here is a resource called the D-School reading list. So let's say I wanted to add this to Catalyst. I have this little web clipper, and I click post. And so it pulls the post title. I can kind of clean it up a bit, the URL, and then I'll go in and I'll kind of grab logo from the page if there is one. And if there's not, then I will just screenshot the logo. And then for the cover, you can add like a page screenshot. And then I'll basically say like, okay, this is like a reading list. So this should go in the educational resources. List type main is I would say resource list. And then I can also say like book. And then the topics. So you can select like a main topic and other topics. So for example, this would be like design. Design thinking. And so the buckets would be like, who is this for? So like, this is for designers. And then you can also put like an organization, locations, which I'm just gonna put online. And then if you wanted to, you can add new drop downs that weren't over here. So you can like add a new topic, a new location, a new room. And I'm just gonna add this to the design network. So I hit add, and then that's gonna show up on Airtable, and I could also have it from there automatically show up on the site. And then it has the pictures and all the tags. And so that's how I've been like basically doing the categorization right now of everything is through that. But the only thing is I can't do that on mobile. And I would like to build maybe even like a really quick, cheap like mobile app that lets me do that, because I have so many tabs on my phone from Facebook, from Slack, that I'm like, oh, I want to save this for later because I don't really need it now, but I want to be able to find it later. And so I want like a better bookmarking app where I can share to app and then do that and be able to categorize everything with that level of like detail, and have it kind of like upload to the site, automatically get points for it as a contributor to the commons, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any real simple, easy to do mobile app to do that. So there's some existing apps where you can share to it and it'll just make a note of the URL, and then later you could do the data entry. But if you want to do the data entry of the phone, I know that you can take a website now and have it accept shares from other apps on the phone, including the browser. Yeah, so there's a web tech to do that, but I don't know. It still would take a fair amount of work to set that up. And then would it be really easy for the user? To make it really easy for the user, you need to get it into the app stores. So like you could develop an Ionic app and stuff like that, but it would, it'd take a week or so, which could be expensive. Yeah, so that's definitely
budget. I just don't know how much it would it would take technically to build something like that, but that would honestly speed up my process the most out of anything. And also I think would be valuable to other people, even just not with Catalyst, just to use for their own purposes. But.
Well, and do you think, but I mean, if you had a tool to where you're on your phone, you're on a website, do you really want to do that data entry on your phone? Or do you want to just save it for later and do it later?
The problem with saving it for later is I have like 2,000 tabs, and trying to go through them now would take weeks. Whereas like if I find something and I'm like, I already looked through it, it's already in my head, like what it is. That process, if I streamlined it, could take me like 30 seconds. That would then be forever cataloged in this knowledge base that also like, hopefully thousands of other people can get use out of. So that tagging, I think the time spent to do that tagging at the time of finding the site, just like is game theoretically is more valuable to do it there and then for that person and for everyone else who's involved in the network. And so I would obviously want people to be rewarded for doing that tagging, whether that was like financially paid. Like I have a pool of money that I'm willing to like put for the first round of commons sharing basically. And like anyone who contributes to that commons would basically get a piece of that. And hopefully, if I did find a way to get some sort of, Patreon subscription or donations, then that would go into that pool. So that's the kind of idea behind that.
Yeah. We got about 4 minutes left. Let me throw an idea out there. Now, this is once again far future. And have you heard of, did we talk about murmurations yet?
Yes,
Okay.
I didn't realize it was the way that birds move together. That's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
I tried looking up
Yeah.
on YouTube. That's all I could find. But go on.
So I'm also thinking that you're doing this thing to where you're going to a website, you're saying, oh, here's the logo, and here's maybe even the descriptive text. So first of all, a lot of websites do have that descriptive text in metadata on the site. So, but it'd be interesting that if you have a collection tool like you just showed us, and then it logged where on the site is getting all that data, and then have it weekly check every website or however often you want to see whether that's changed. So then it would be constantly that other thing where we're talking about where things get stale, and then giving websites the ability, just like in a murmurations, to post that information so we know what the updates are and we know we can grab it automatically, but have that be optional because people won't do it. But there are some services out there where you can go to a website, highlight some text, and it'll check that website and let you know when it changes. But you would want to, I don't know of any of those that give an API that you could integrate into your Airtable to where it automatically pull it, and then maybe not automatically pull it, but pull it so that someone could review it. Because if the website doesn't mean it, you don't know that you're getting the same text, but at least you'll know that that text that has changed enough that it's gone and someone can take a look at it. And then, yeah, and I think also if you do get some funds, not just have it community where people get it. I mean, I guess you could do it this way too, but there's a lot of VAs in certain countries where it doesn't cost that much because of the difference in currencies, that you could have just some trained people that go in and categorize this without too much expense.
Yeah.
So all those options.
I don't know if this makes everything more complex, but there's something about like when you did that in your web browser, there are parts of it that were way too complex for me, and parts like I would look at that and be like, there's no way I'm data entering that. But if I was able to go in and let's say be like, oh, I can grab logos and spend, half an hour just grabbing logos and spend half an hour, just doing the text. I think what Bentley's suggesting is a more AI approach of like, we already have the logo and then it will just keep updating the logo for that portion, but having that in between where people who are less tech savvy I can just tag something and say, ooh, this website looks really cool. Someone ought to look at this and be able to do what I can't do with it. And if it's already repetitive and someone's already tagged that one, it doesn't care. And if it hasn't been looked at, people know to look at it. And people know if they have one specific skill set, like I'd rather there's a URL, I can keep getting logos all day long, no problem, especially if it's that easy and it's just dragging over it. But doing it in piecemeal so that if you're somebody who can go and do all of that, great. And if you're someone who can just tag it, great. And if you're someone who can go in and do a bunch of logos, we know that'll be done for all of them. And then having AI go back in and update it would be great. But that sounds like, I always like coming up with, seems like simple solutions, but I know they're hard to code.
That little web clipper, you can write little like scripts to pull things from like HTML tags and other things, but it's beyond me. So Bentley, maybe that's something that we could at some point take a look at. But yeah. I don't know if I've also researched Open Graph, which is what Facebook uses to like categorize things. And I know there's a lot of sites that like have like type, topic, like movie length. They have like all of those like sub tags in there. But I don't know if you could pull from that with that web clipper as like a first step towards that. I love the idea though of kind of like being able to go and sync with the site and pull different things. And I was gonna, I don't know. I'm not techie enough to like really be able to talk to the people from Murmurations and like understand what's going on.
Yeah, and I can definitely help with that. If I was going to suggest next steps, is that the biggest thing is with all of our projects is funding and or volunteers. So I guess it's resources, right? Seeing if so that's really kind of the nut that we might spend a little time trying to crack, because everything else we can figure if you have both of those. And what's funny, maybe we need to talk about again either on one of our Friday calls or next Saturday, is we've tried to build similar, well, it has a slight overlap with what we were doing just knowledge commons for our projects,
right?
What's the best way for us as a group to kind of collaborate on all this stuff and not duplicate? So
right.
That's one thing that came up for me as I was watching that. Have you been the only one doing the data entry so far, Vincent? Has all that come from you, or are there other people logging in and contributing as well already?
Right now, in the current form, because I've been changing the tools every week, I've been the main person doing all the data entry. There are other people who have contributed to the database in bulk. And so that's another thing. Like, hey, I already made a list of all these things. And, I've gotten some CSVs from people of data that I've put into it already.
Okay.
No one doing the individual uploading because I've been changing that every single week, and it would be
Right.
a nightmare.
Yeah, the nature of prototypes, that's always fun. Is there any element of sort of deduplication built in? Like on that web clipper, if you go to submit a site that I've already submitted, does it stop me? Does it warn me? Does it merge them?
These are sort of things that I need help with kind of automating. Airtable has a built-in dedupe function where you can kind of go in and like it'll pull up two records that match the URL or the title, and you could dedupe them. And you can also set up like filters where like if a new record is submitted and it matches an existing URL, then it won't push to the site. But that stuff just gets so much more complicated, and I don't really know how to approach it yet because there's other issues that I have that have come up with. I think that's a good problem to have if people are submitting the same thing and then kind of like merging them. I would assume would be the best way to kind of go about that and like give both people credit for helping on it. The easy way to go about this would be, I would say, like when you upload a resource, you can maybe just have a list of all the other resources. So you can say like, hey, type in the URL, like make sure it's not here. I don't know if that's not user friendly enough, but
Yeah, that's part of doing if you're
you
doing
need
it
the URL.
piecemeal. If I went on and I did all of that and I'm in my little brain, that would be a lot of work more than when you're. And if I knew right away, as soon as I went to clip it with the URL, that it had already been done and it was maybe just missing some spots, I could fill in those spots. But if I had to do that all and then find it was already duplicated, I would never be doing it again. Is what is yeah, from my point of view. I'd be like, I learned and did all that. Whereas I would absolutely just copy and paste the URL and be like, oh, someone already did it. Cool. I don't need to do it.
Yeah, and I work in an industry where I help sort of people do data entry, and for the most part, people don't check if it already exists. Even in tools where it's super easy and sometimes it'll stop you, they still find ways to bypass it and add duplicate information, because they're in the middle of something. One of the steps in their head isn't check to see if it already exists. It's just like, okay, I've got this, I want to enter it and then move on to the next step. And I think to Jubilee's point, the first time either you go to search and the same thing shows up 3 times, you're like, oh, never mind. Or if you submit it and do all the work, and then you found out that you just submitted the third one and they all disagree, again, that's probably going to be like, oh, I'll just use Google.
Yeah, no, I think if I were to build or have a like an app built where you can like share to, the first thing would be it would check if that URL exists on the site and pre-fill with the existing data where you can like kind of like add to it.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. As of right now, it's my mind remembering if I've added a resource.
Yeah, which for a prototype, it totally makes sense, right? Like I won't have any form of deduplication in mind for ages, but that's something that like until I have it, I kind of can't bring in a bunch of people because it gets unwieldy really fast.
Yeah. I mean, it would be nice to have other people kind of working on help categorizing the data, but I think at this point, I need more help making that process smoother so that other people actually want to. like right now, if I can make it easier for me, where I'm like, it's seamless for me to do it, then at that point I would feel comfortable with like opening up for other people.
Right. Cool. Yeah, I guess if you're gonna like purpose build a Chrome extension, you could almost have like the icon change if we know about the current site. So as you're, going and browsing in Chrome, if you go to some cool, accelerator page, you're like, oh, this is cool, and you look at the button and it has the we don't have that yet. Cool, I'll go click and start adding it. If it just did that for every site you visit, it might be an easy indication on like, oh, the site you're on we don't have. So if it's useful, consider.
Yeah. I think with the Chrome, I have a field in Airtable, which basically is like form URL plus all the information concatenated like of that post. So it's like an update post URL. So basically what I would do is if the Chrome extension bookmarked something and it was a URL that existed, it would just redirect you to a pre-filled form where you can like edit it.
Right.
Could you do an iframe in a Chrome extension?
Not sure where. I mean, you might be able to, like, I've used Chrome extensions that when you interact with them in certain ways, it opens up a new tab, and then on that page you probably could, or you might be able to, but like, I don't think it.
Like, I'm wondering if you could just embed a form in a Chrome extension.
I see. You mean like use the Chrome extension to like sort of add a frame to the page, like on the top or the side of the bottom or something.
Right. I'm saying like, because I have, it's like Airtable forms, right? That update the data, like that's done. If I could just embed a form in that Airtable extension, which is kind of what it is.
Right.
I don't know if that's like an easy thing to do, I guess. Adriel, you are also kind of like on the no code border, or do you code as well?
Before you guys get into that, let's say goodbye to YouTube because we're already
yeah,
6 minutes past our time. All right. Bye.
All right.